Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Greetings from Sustainable Development Policy Institute. It's a pleasure to have you all with us. This is Saira Adnan. I'm currently working as project coordinator for Network for Clean Energy Transition program at STPI. Today, I'll be moderating the session. On behalf of STPI and NZ, I extend a warm welcome to all of you who has joined us today for the report launch on exploring country platforms to advance Pakistan's energy transition. Before we begin, just quickly setting some housekeeping rules. The session is being recorded and streamed live across all STPI social media platforms, including YouTube, X, and LinkedIn. We'll also be having a short question answer segment towards the end of the session. So if you have any comments or queries, just feel free to drop them in the chat box and we will try to address them towards the end of the session. So today's report explored the concept of country platform as a coordinated approach to mobilize financing, align policies, and foster partnerships that accelerates Pakistan's energy transition. It highlights how such frameworks can help bridge between domestic priorities and international support, which is a crucial step in achieving a sustainable and low carbon growth. To officially begin the proceedings, I would like to invite Dr. Khalid Waleed, who is a research fellow at STPI, to share his welcome remarks and set the context for today's discussion. With this, over to you, Dr. Khalid.
Thank you so much, Saira. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I hope I am audible. Okay.
Yes, you are.
This is very timely. We meet at a moment when traditional model of climate finance that was anchored in grants and concessional flows is visibly eroding. Developing countries like Pakistan, they were once promised that large-scale grant-based support would enable them to cope with climate change. As COP30 is coming, there is yet to the nations yet to have consensus on what would be the future model of climate finance architecture, particularly this political economy shift that is powered by USA's withdrawal from Paris Agreement. So we need to see how this changing landscape would be, particularly for climate finance architecture, particularly from the grant-based climate finance architecture. The flows of pure grants are shrinking, as we know, fragmented across multiple initiatives and often locked behind the conditionalities that dilute their effectiveness. In their place, we now see the steady rise of market-based finance mechanisms, particularly carbon markets, green bonds, sustainability-linked instruments, blended finance structures, and catalytic but limited role of philanthropic networks. We need to integrate these tools. We need to integrate all these mechanisms that sort of empower climate finance for a climate justice. So comes the idea of country platforms, which has emerged as a practical and institutional solution. I'm focusing on institutions right now. A country platform is not another donor conference or pledging session. It is a government-led standing mechanism, a kind of permanently on deal table with rules that convenes ministries, development partners, private financiers around a single national transitional plan, which can replace this grant-based climate finance. Obviously, it would be a subset. Grant-based climate finance would be a subset of country platform, but there would be another mechanisms, but we need to integrate these mechanisms to ensure that we need to have priorities, policies, pipelines in one agenda. That is that we need to move money in a lockstep rather than in silos. So integrated planning is what country platform fosters, particularly for developing countries. What makes a country platform a true platform for climate finance and climate justice? We need to avoid becoming another meeting-heavy forum. 5 features that distinguish a functioning country platform. They are: 1, national ownership with a single strategy. When I say single strategy, it means NDCs, countries' development priorities, countries' economic transformation plan. They should be interlinked. They should be come under a broader ambit of integrated planning. That is again a country platform, so that we can have again, I say, economy, energy, environment in one equation. Second component of a platform, a true platform, should be formal governance. Formal governance mean it should have a structure that is embedded in the institutional setup of climate economy in a country, a cabinet level steering committee supported by technical working groups, but it should have a political ownership, national ownership as well. Third is policy pipeline linkage. We need to have reform milestones, tariff adjustments, regulatory frameworks, MRV systems that should come into this policy pipeline linkage. Fourth is what I say is blended finance architecture. We need to stack public and IFI concessional capital guarantees and private sector commitments in one stack of architecture that should support blended finance, particularly for climate finance. And then lastly, the fifth one, climate accountability and transparency. A results framework with public disclosure ensures that no partner can free ride. All the partners, they are sort of linked together, and there is accountability and transparency mechanism that ensures climate commitments, financial commitments, they sort of translate into an actionable, equitable climate action. So these were the five pillars how a climate country platform can look like. There are several examples in past that can be a base for a country platform, particularly in Indonesia's case, the JETP, it was around 10 to 20 billion USDs. In South Africa's case, it was around 8.5 billion. For Vietnam, it was 15 billion. Senegal, 2.5 billion. But what changed is geopolitical landscape after the US withdrawal from JETP initiative in 2025, just like the Paris Agreement. Now we need to bring up all the efforts on one platform, and it should be anchored particularly from public sector, private sector, philanthropic organizations, and community-led organizations as well. So why do these platforms matter beyond these sort of webinars and these sort of nice workshops? These platforms, they compress transaction cost. In economics, when two agents interacts, there is some cost that each agent have to pay if they want to have an effective transaction. This is known as a transaction cost. These platforms, they bring together all the stakeholders. So the cost of transaction or cost of collaborative approach that can be minimized as well. This is what these platforms are for. They sequence reforms with finance, particularly when in developing countries, we talk about reforms, particularly climate reforms. They are anchored in Ministry of Climate Change, but we all know that Ministry of Climate Change is not the only ministry that should be on board if you want to have a broader reforms. So these platforms, they bring Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Power, Ministry of Energy, all on one table under Ministry of Climate Change. And we have this sequence of institutional reforms, particularly pertaining to finance. For Pakistan, this mattered profoundly. Our power sector suffers with high capacity payments, stranded assets, fiscal deficits. On the climate side, we have a massive amount of climate catastrophes, ranging from heat waves to floods, but we do not have integrated planning. So if there is a platform that integrate all these ministries, all these initiatives, all these problems together, maybe we can find a one joint solution for these problems as well. So what should be the designing principles for country platform as we are discussing this report? That is very timely. Policy brief that is very timely for Pakistan's context, particularly for developing countries context. I would say that in the time of eroding climate finance, I think these principles, these sort of reports, they should be act as a guiding document, as a torchbearer, so that we can reorient finance to climate finance and reorient climate finance to those who really deserve, who are really victim of climate change, and we ensure climate justice. So these principles are one mandate, a political mandate, a national ownership that is required. Second, a plan, pipeline, to term sheet approach, which means that sectoral investment plans, they should be standardized data sheets. There should be models that should support public-private people partnerships, finance stacking, which means we need to have pre-agreed concessional agreements, guarantees, private commitments into one national financial stack. Fourth is MRB and disclosure. For Pakistan's case, there are multiple dashboards. They need to be integrated so that we can have dashboards for climate finance. It will bring MRV and disclosure, accountability, transparency. Fifth, that is very important, is a social contract, because these are country level platforms, and they are discussing national energy transition plans and other sort of things. So having a just transition, it should involve a social angle as well. What would be the contract between people of a country and those who are financing these energy transition plans and climate transition plans? So we need to have this social contract as well. That's where that is very important for the case of Pakistan. Finally, let me emphasize more on the role of philanthropy networks. Philanthropy is not a substitute for public or market capital, but it is a catalytic aspect of it. In Pakistan's case, philanthropic actors can help finance the soft side of the transition, particularly skill development, social protection for affected communities, and gender inclusion as well. These areas are often neglected in a country level, national level program or platform initiative. They can also support piloting new models, absorbing early risk that later enable scaling through private and IFI capital. So in short, country platform, they act as a catalytic across the board platform where all the stakeholders, they can join hands, particularly in times of eroding grant-based climate finance. If Pakistan is to navigate the era of eroding grants and expanding markets, the country platform is not optional. It is the vehicle that can convert ambition into action, uncertainty into investment, and fragmentation into coherence. I welcome you all to this webinar. Thank you so much for being with us. Looking forward to technical presentation and the launch of this policy brief that will guide policymakers in order to have an integrated solution of Pakistan's multifaceted crisis, that is economy, energy, environment. So country platform is one effective solution for all these crises and problems. Looking forward to it. Thank you so much, Saira. Back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Khalid, for setting the context and very rightly highlighting the importance of integrated and collaborative mechanism in driving Pakistan's energy transition. Building on that, to help us understand the concept of and framework we are discussing today, I would like to invite Engineer Ubaidur Rahman Zia, who is the head of energy unit at STPI, to set the tone for today's discussion by unpacking what country platform really means and the broader global perspectives around them. With this, over to you, Ubaid.
Yes, thank you so much, Sarah. If you just kind of confirm if my slides are moving.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So yeah, okay. So I think perhaps mainly for the report that we're discussing today, that is on exploring country platforms to advance Pakistan's energy transition, it would be mainly NISMA. That will be coming shortly. And so the idea of having me today is to just to kind of give you a bit of a context, which Dr. Khalid, I believe, is already set pretty much. So I think before going there, just taking a step back, the whole debate, the idea of country platforms, and I think just at the very start, you also kind of mentioned that this is kind of a collaboration that is the kind of research that is done by STPI and its Network for Clean Energy Transition. And within this network, we actually have a theme on green financing, which kind of analyzing different instruments, different platforms, different partnerships that can actually be used to mobilize finance for Pakistan's energy transition, particularly, especially given that you've already seen that Pakistan has just recently launched its nationally determined contribution, third iteration, which kind of mentions that over the next almost 10 to 11 years, Pakistan's climate financing needs extends as high as almost 567 billion US dollars. So that's again something that's huge, and it actually needs a whole of a nation approach to try to understand and scope different platforms, options, partnerships that can actually be used to mobilize that funding. So that was the initial idea when we kind of started scoping different instruments. But then the kind of the Dr. Khalid also talked about the what actually happened to some of the similar platforms, such as the Just Energy Transition Partnership. So yeah, given that context, so what I'm going to do is kind of set a very brief scene of what the country platforms are, and from there we'll kind of go how we can actually make a case for them for Pakistan as well. So now again, basically there's no one strict definition, but it's kind of a concept that has always some elements in common with the other. So this is what we're going to focus on. When you talk about country platforms, Dr. Khalid has already mentioned that they're kind of a voluntary, a government-led, and more importantly, a multi-stakeholder partnership that can actually be used to attract and coordinate on mobilizing climate finance in support of the common goal, particularly the sustainable development goals. So this is basically how the international cooperation on development and climate change could, or in fact, even should be organized at the country level. So you can kind of think country platforms as a strategic country-driven approach to mobilizing climate and development finance by translating the climate and other key priorities in the documents that Pakistan had already mentioned, such as its national adaptation plan, national development contributions, other energy sector policies, and even other priorities into kind of should be using the word a very programmatic investment approach, and aligning financial flows and even the stakeholders, including key ministries as well as the private sector. So just very briefly, the basic idea is to that by moving from a kind of a very fragmented or a project-driven approach to a programmatic country-led model, we can actually achieve greater investment mobilization and improve coordination while also reducing fragmentation and administrative burden on the developing countries such as Pakistan to ultimately support the systemic climate and socioeconomic transitions. So going forward, what are some of the very key elements, or what does the a country platform actually include? So now, if you look at the recent, because I mean the country, I mean the model, the concept has always been there, but the model has actually evolved substantially over the past few years. So if you look at the recent debate, country platforms include three uh, very core aspects. The first one is that you really need a political commitment around an ambitious trajectory that is a lot integrated within the national climate and development priorities. And this is being again one, and one be again just focusing on one. It needs to be a lot integrated with each other. So again, the political commitment, one, that needs to be there. The alignment of an investment plan on the trajectory that we'll be proposing, and third, and perhaps the most important one, is the coordination across domestic as well as foreign financial institutions that can actually mobilize funding at the required scale. So these are the, again, three very core principles that are integrated in any kind of a country platform, be it DHP or etc. So, I mean, various combinations of these elements were actually already present in the past investment plans. We'll be shortly touching upon them as well. But what differentiate the generation of these platforms for the earlier ones is the combined focus on the climate and development. So this implies ambition with platforms supporting comprehensive strategies to deeply transform the national economies, national plans, so that the countries can actually achieve their climate and development objectives. Now, talking a bit also about some of the key elements of a platform, it again, just like I kind of mentioned that basically, again, the governance and the implementation mechanism to address the need for the structural transformation in developing countries. That is, again, something that's most important. So for that, I mean, how we kind of classify in a rule, it's kind of, we have 6 different important areas. One is that country platforms really needs to be uh, anchored in the national plan or the strategy. That is not, again, just about the projects, but just like we kind of talked about programs and policies as well. So they must be intrinsically linked to long-term national policy goals at both climate adaptation as well as talking about the mitigation transitions as well. The second, they need to be country-owned and country-led, reflecting that what are the each. I mean, again, there is no one size fit all model. They need to kind of reflect the country's specific set of opportunities, its specific set of challenges as well. And these platforms require, I mean, the national international commitments and must therefore be again built on the policies defined by the countries themselves and following what you call kind of like or the existing deliberative process at the national level or externally imposed, not again the externally imposed any agenda. So yeah, the first one is the anchoring in the national policies, then the need to be up country owned and country led. And the third is again that country platforms governance should actually align very closely with the existing process that is at the national level. So this way, I mean, they can kind of enable the national stakeholders and the government's leadership to discuss and reach a consensus on any of the strategic priorities that the country has. So bringing together the various forces within what you call the national ecosystem of any country, including such as the line ministries, it could be the Ministry of Energy, the Finance, and even the facilitating regulatory discussions. Uh, and not just perhaps on the finance end, but also on the technical, strategic, political level. That is also something that's really important when you're talking about the country platform. And the last, I think we have been doing it repeatedly, is a very clear programmatic direction, which is again essential for the credibility of any platform and therefore for their ability to attract this adequate financing as well. So now again, just one thing. Uh, I mean, okay, yeah, I just kind of the slide that one of the very important points and the very critical areas that if I mean, I will talk very briefly about the previous similar kind of mechanisms, and particularly for the developing countries, that has evidently been very hard is that the internal alignment is actually really difficult. I mean, although these platforms serve as an explicit coordination tool for external government actors as well, but a very high degree of coordination within the various government bodies and agencies is involved in the agreement. So that's something that's really important. So yeah, again, so that's something that's the main key pillars around which all of the country platforms needs to be really the strength. And just like we talked about, so just very briefly summarizing is there's no one size fits approach doesn't actually work for similar country platform. They need to be aligned very strongly with the national strategies and targets such as LTDs, long-term strategies, LTLEDs, and NAPs and NDCs, etc. So now coming to the next slide. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I just again, I think this has already been touched, but still I'll touch upon towards the very bottom where we have kind of highlighted some of the benefits. So yeah, I mean, what country platforms lead to is again a stronger a national or a country level ownership, and they kind of align these investments and policies with the country's ambitions as well as the commitments which the country has made. And eventually it kind of leads to enhanced coordination, enhanced efficiencies, and not just within the government, but it also kind of streamline these funding sources and improve collaboration among different government bodies, the private sector, the international partners, such as the multilateral development banks, climate funds. So it's kind of eases the this what we call has been one of the major challenges is the administrative strain that is there on the for the developing countries. The next being yes, a very obvious increased access to finance and its mobilization. So these aggregated financing sources, they kind of support this catalytic effect by encouraging participation, not just from those partners, but also from the businesses, institutional investors, banks, and kind of leveraging these also. Also, Dr. Khalid touched upon was the concession financing to crowd in the private capital as well. Next, it also provides very strong these positive signals to the market, which kind of lowers the risk for the investors, increase their confidence, and kind of encourage this long-term investment in climate transition by demonstrating this that there is policy stability, especially a case that's really relevant for a country like Pakistan. And so this kind of provide a very more clear investment framework and a de-risking, not de-risking in its sense, but also kind of a very transparent investment framework as well. So yeah, moving forward, brief. Let me show you what these are. Starting from 2021, when the first JETP of South Africa, Just Energy Transition Partnership IP investment plan of South Africa came in, there have been 8 more, roughly country platforms. So, after the South Africa, it was the Egypt that kind of came up with NWFE. That was almost a 14.7 billion dollar estimated investments were required. And since then, there has been 4 more JETPs, JETP by the Indonesia, the Vietnam, Macedonia, and Senegal as well. Definitely 2 of them are still in the discussion phase, but JETPs, the model of the JETP has actually been a lot changed, a lot, it needs to be changed a lot, particularly since the post Trump era. But other than that, the Bangladesh Climate and Development Platform, Brazil's BIP, and Colombia's socio-ecological transition portfolio, you can also again kind of see that the investments requirements are actually substantial for these country platforms, and that's also needs to be one of the very key takeaways. I'll kind of summarize that key takeaway a bit shortly as well. But yes, you can also kind of see its linkages with its interlinkage with as percentage of GDP of different countries. And as of now, almost 6 of these 9 total these platforms have been implemented, while 2 are in the discussion phase, and the last one is kind of in a launching phase. We'll kind of see a bit of brief on that as well. And one thing just before going to the conclusion is that, the reason why we're also in very start focusing on energy sector is because energy transitions are the main objective in 5 platforms, and all have some form of these decarbonization targets, even when they focus, for instance, such as in the case of Bangladesh, has been on the adaptation. So, so the energy sector has been actually one of the very key focused areas that have based on for these again platforms as well. So beyond this, again, initial commitments, country platforms also depend on the development of a detailed investment plan that includes a pipeline of bankable projects for different partners and opportunities to kind of finance. But again, just before coming to Nisma, that's going to show us the highlights of the study. So again, the last point that from my side would be that they do have a substantial potential for Pakistan, but let's not kind of treat them as, or let's not kind of think just of them as just kind of magic bullet. None of, they demand sustained commitment and dialogue with stakeholders, with international development partners and private financiers to kind of overcome these long-standing barriers to the investment and reform that already exists very strongly in countries such as Pakistan. So, and the goal that we kind of pursue through platforms are long-term. Just like we saw the figures, they're expensive, they require political commitment, they require policy commitment, and they also require substantial institutional capacity. So this is something that the country has to do on its own. And more to the point, many of these issues have been preventing access to cheap financing also lie beyond the developing country that seek it, such as very high inflation, high global interest rate, and as long as the fiscal space kind of keeps dying out, it gets even challenging. But at the same time, looking into Pakistan's energy sector, which I won't be speaking much, and let invite Nisma over here to kind of further down on how does it make a case for Pakistan as particularly. So yeah, thank you so much, Sarah. This was more than less from my end. So yeah, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ubaid, for the comprehensive overview and for highlighting the key challenges, breaking down the technical and institutional aspect of the country platform approach. To take this discussion further, I would like to invite Nisma Rizwan, who is the lead author of this report and currently working as research associate at STPI, to deliver her technical presentation on exploring country platforms and building a case for Pakistan's energy transition. With this, over to you, Nisma.
Yes, thank you, Zaira. Let me just share my screen. Just to confirm it's visible, right?
Yes, it's visible.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. As Sarah introduced, I'm Nisma Rizwan, and I work as a research associate at STPI's Energy Unit. And I'm here today to sort of share some insights from a policy paper we've been working on during the last few months around building a case for a country platform for Pakistan's energy transition. So this paper is the result of an extensive analysis of national and international policy frameworks, research articles, and case studies, as well as a focus group discussion with experts that have worked closely with the development of country platforms across the globe. Since Dr. Khalid and Ubaid have talked extensively about the conceptual basis of country platforms, I'll just go ahead and focus more on what they mean specifically for Pakistan and how they could help bridge the gap between our energy transition ambitions and their implementation. Okay, so Pakistan's energy landscape is, in fact, one in transition. So over the past decade or so, we've come a long way, especially towards the diversification of our energy mix. At present, renewable energy, mainly through solar and wind, accounts for roughly 12.5% of the national energy mix. And on top of that, more than half of our electricity today comes from low carbon sources, mainly hydropower and nuclear, in addition to the renewables. This has been possible largely as a result of major investments in solar parks and wind farms, especially under the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, and more recently due to a rise in distributed solar capacity, as thousands of households and industries have opted to become prosumers in order to reduce their energy costs and hedge against unreliable supply. This, in fact, has turned Pakistan into one of Asia's fastest growing solar markets, where the country imported nearly 17 gigawatts of solar panels in 2024 alone. And these accounted for nearly a quarter of monthly grid electricity in 2025. However, beneath this progress still lies a certain fragility. More than half, or say about 56% of Pakistan's installed power capacity still comes from fossil fuels, primarily oil, gas, and coal. So around a quarter of our electricity is generated from imported gas, and another for 14% from coal, much of which is imported as well. So this dependence makes our energy system both expensive and volatile. It kind of ties us to international fuel shocks, strains our foreign exchange reserves, and fuels a circular debt crisis that has now ballooned to 2.4 trillion rupees. But fossil fuels are not the only culprit here. Much of the energy transition, in fact, is happening in an more or less ad hoc manner. For instance, the solar boom that we had in the past year or so has also brought unintended challenges. So while solar, like rooftop solar adoption has surged, it has been concentrated among wealthier consumers. And since our distributors lose daytime demand and revenues, the costs are shifted to the customers that still consume grid electricity, which more often than not are also the poorest customers. So while we're successfully expanding energy access and diversifying the mix, the equity and technical and financial resilience of our energy system still remain under strain. So basically, a lot of work still needs to be put in, and luckily our long-term vision for clean energy remains ambitious and forward-looking. Pakistan does have a lot of potential for renewable energy, and our policies do intend to leverage that. So under the third iteration of our nationally determined contributions that were submitted last month, as Ubaid also mentioned, Pakistan aims to cut projected emissions by 50% by 2035, and the energy transition is key lever for realizing that. So high priority action areas under the NDCs include achieving 30% share of renewable energy, or 60% if you count hydropower as well. Then adding 30% electric vehicles to the volume of new electric vehicles sold, advancing large-scale industrial decarbonization, incorporating battery energy storage systems, and energy efficiency gains across buildings, irrigation, and transport. But this ambition obviously comes at a cost. So the NDCs estimate that around $189.6 billion would be required by 2030 and $307.8 billion by 2035 to achieve these targets. These are staggering figures, especially for an economy under fiscal strain like ours. So the question that arises here is, where will these resources come from? So broadly speaking, Pakistan's energy transition may be financed through two main streams, domestic and international sources. The NDCs also indicate that only 17% of the committed emission reductions can be achieved unconditionally through domestic resources, while the remaining 33% are conditional upon international support. So on a domestic scale, resources may be mobilized mainly through public finance or private investments. We've made some encouraging developments to enhance the volume of resources that can be raised domestically. For instance, Pakistan has ventured into green capital markets, issuing green bonds and sukuks. Similarly, under IMF's Resilience and Sustainability Facility, the government has also imposed multiple levies, most notably the petroleum levy, the revenue from which could be recycled to support energy transition activities. Additionally, Pakistan's green taxonomy has recently been published to sort of guide financial institutions in identifying and categorizing environmentally sustainable investments. And this also aims at increasing private sector participation in financing the energy transition. On the international side, Pakistan relies heavily on multilateral development banks and bilateral donors, such as the World Bank, ADB, GCF, or individual countries like Germany, Japan, or China. More recently, philanthropic and blended finance initiatives have also begun exploring partnerships with Pakistan, but they're still in like a nascent stage. But when we look towards mobilizing these resources, we're faced by several financial or institutional bottlenecks. The clearest of these bottlenecks is perhaps that domestic resources are quite limited. Private banks remain risk averse, and fiscal constraints of the government leave limited space for direct public investment. Our debt servicing obligations already consume about 60% of government expenditure. Development spending has continuously been squeezed to sort of accommodate other priorities, and our ability to raise concessional finance is limited by debt sustainability concerns, making it very difficult for the public sector to fund the energy transition alone. At the same time, responsibilities for the energy transition and climate finance are spread across multiple ministries and agencies, such as the Ministry of Climate Change, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Energy, or Planning Commission. Each of these does play an important role, but there is no overarching coordination framework to bring them together. So this fragmentation weakens both efficiency and credibility. And when investors see this, their confidence in our market drops as well. Moving on, we are faced with similar issues when it comes to international finance mobilization. So international finance still flows through project by project modalities, each governed by its own approval, procurement, and reporting procedures. This fragmented approach leads to multiple issues such as the duplication of effort, delayed implementation, and limited visibility of cumulative impact. But at the same time, a major chunk of external climate finance is loan-based and often driven by donor priorities rather than domestic needs and national policies, while Accessing truly concessional or grant-based finance, for example, through the GCF, remains slow and administratively heavy, requiring multiple layers of validation, which often end up reducing the effectiveness of the mechanism itself in driving meaningful impact. Another issue is perhaps that private international investment still remains low and is constrained mainly by perceived country risk and currency volatility, and let's say the absence of clear de-risking tools, such as guarantees or hedging facilities. So when we look at all the bottlenecks from a broader angle, we can see that Pakistan's shortcomings in mobilizing effective finance for its energy transition are not entirely related to the availability of finance, but rather somewhat equally to how it flows. So while resources do exist, they're scattered across institutions with no single mechanism to align them under one national vision or strategy. So this is where a country platform becomes crucial. It offers precisely the architecture that we lack. As we already heard in Obaid's initial remarks or Dr. Khalid's, that country platforms are country-led, multi-stakeholder coordination mechanisms that align international support with domestic priorities through a unified investment framework. They're not new institutions, but rather structured ecosystems bringing together governments, development partners, private investors, and civil society under a single umbrella. In essence, they replace project by project chaos with a country-led programmatic model. So for Pakistan's energy transition, a country platform could serve a wide range of purposes. It could ensure proper alignment between donors and the projects they fund in such a way that every project and domestic initiative contributes to shared national priorities. Then it could enable financial aggregation, bringing together concessional loans, private capital, philanthropic capital, and public funds in a single investment pipeline. It could strengthen transparency and accountability through a unified monitoring, reporting, and verification system, giving investors greater confidence and also increasing private sector engagement. It could also, in a way, go as far as embedding just transition principles within energy projects and finance, ensuring that the shift to clean energy creates opportunities for workers and communities rather than leaving them behind. So in order to materialize the benefits associated with country platforms and leverage them to advance Pakistan's energy transition, our policy paper identifies 8 core interlinked recommendations. The first and let's say, most fundamental step is getting the governance right. So Pakistan's energy and climate governance is currently scattered across ministries, each doing important work, but often in silos, as I think Dr. Khalid explained extensively. The country platform model depends on changing this dynamic. So the platform must be anchored in a strong political leadership, ideally under the Prime Minister's office or a cabinet level steering committee with joint operational responsibility shared by key ministries such as finance, energy, or even the planning commission. The second recommendation is that Pakistan must consolidate fragmented financial flows into a single coherent framework. So today, climate finance comes in through multiple windows, be they grants, loans, projects, or bilateral programs. And each of these has its own reporting rules and timeframes. A country platform would integrate these streams into a unified financing architecture, so built around a central vehicle, which ideally could be the long-delayed Pakistan Climate Change Fund. This fund could serve as a coordination hub under one national investment framework rather than merely as a pool of money. In the longer term, this structure can be complemented by innovative financial instruments such as green bonds, sustainability-linked loans, or debt for climate swaps to expand fiscal space and sort of attract international investment. The third recommendation, it addresses one of Pakistan's most persistent challenges, which is shortage of finance-ready projects. So the the country platform should include a project preparation facility as well, which would be a dedicated mechanism that helps identify, design, and structure projects at early stages and ensure that they align with the country's NDCs. This would also finance feasibility studies, business models, environmental and social assessments, and risk analyses, so that by the time a project reaches a financier, it is ready for investment. The fourth recommendation would be to build institutional and technical capacity. So Pakistan's public institutions, from ministries to provincial departments, do require technical and financial capacity to manage complex multi-stakeholder investments. The country platform should therefore include a capacity development component supported by international partners to strengthen competencies in various areas, including project finance and structuring, climate risk and carbon accounting, monitoring and evaluation, and policy and regulatory design. Plus, training programs, South-South cooperation, and embedded technical experts can also help accelerate this learning curve. Our fifth recommendation centers around people. So ensuring that Pakistan's energy transition is not only green, but also just and equitable. Energy transitions inevitably marginalize certain factions within the system. These could be low-income households who cannot afford new technologies, or workers from fossil fuel-based sectors who risk losing employment once these fuels are phased out. So it is crucial to ensure representation from provinces, labor unions, women's organizations, SMEs, academia, basically all vulnerable communities in the country platform's governance structure, while also making social impact assessments and gender-sensitive design mandatory for all country platform projects, and integrating social protection and skills development measures for affected workers and communities, potentially with the help of philanthropic finance, as Dr. Khalid mentioned earlier. Moving on, the country platform should serve as a central coordination hub that aligns all external support under a common national framework. So this would entail organizing regular joint dialogues between the steering committee, development partners, and private financiers, encouraging co-financing arrangements rather than isolated donor projects, and embedding shared standards for monitoring and environmental safeguards across all programs. In addition to this, in order to attract large-scale investment, Pakistan may demonstrate policy stability. Actually, it must demonstrate policy stability, transparency, and reform continuity. This can be ensured by institutionalizing cross-ministerial coordination on transition policies to reduce mixed signals to investors, enacting predictable frameworks for tariff setting, subsidy rationalization, and carbon pricing, strengthening energy market governance and regulatory autonomy, and embedding major reforms in legislation rather than administrative orders to safeguard them from political turnover. And for our final recommendation, we propose the establishment of a robust monitoring, evaluation, and learning system built on digital data infrastructure to track the flow of climate finance from source to impact, monitor emissions reductions and socioeconomic co-benefits, evaluate progress through independent audits, and publish results through open access dashboards for full transparency. The goal here would basically be to actually for us to understand if the country platform is achieving its objective or not. So translating these recommendations into action requires a phased and programmatic approach. So our policy paper proposes a three-stage roadmap that builds momentum step by step. In the first phase, which should last about a year or two, the focus should be on establishing institutional credibility and ownership. This includes securing cabinet level endorsement, forming a high level steering committee under the Prime Minister or another key ministry, and setting up a technical secretariat supported by thematic working groups. A national diagnostic study should simultaneously identify transition priorities, investment needs, and policy bottlenecks. So during this phase, the Pakistan Climate Change Fund can also be operationalized as the central financing vehicle, while consultations may be launched with development partners, the private sector, and provincial stakeholders to ensure broad-based participation and alignment. So the idea is basically to set the stage for future operationalization. And the second phase, which should last another year or two, should also move from structure to implementation. So this should take care of the operationalization part. So here the country platform should develop a credible pipeline of bankable projects through a project preparation facility, prioritize high impact areas such as distributed renewables, grid upgrades, and industrial decarbonization, and also begin deploying blended finance instruments like green or transition bonds. Parallel efforts should focus on building technical capacity across ministries and financial institutions, introducing targeted energy and fiscal reforms, and fostering close coordination with donors and investors through regular investment roundtables and co-financing arrangements. So by the end of this phase, the country platform should demonstrate early successes. So there should be visible projects, there should be finance being mobilized, and there should be measurable progress toward emission reductions and energy security goals. In the third and final phase, the objective would be to institutionalize and scale the platform. This would involve expanding partnerships with multilateral and private financiers, empowering provincial governments to manage subnational investment windows, embedding just transition and reskilling programs, and enacting legislation that formally sort of integrates the country platform into national climate and energy frameworks. So transparent monitoring and evaluation system, including, say, a public dashboard tracking financial flows, emissions, and social impacts, should also exist here, like by this time, to ensure accountability and continuous learning. So basically, if put together and pursued with consistency and political commitment, this three-phased approach should allow the country platform to evolve into the central mechanism through which Pakistan coordinates its energy transition, or mobilizes large-scale finance and delivers an equitable, resilient, and credible low-carbon future, which also aligns with its NDC priorities. So I think I'll stop here, and I'd also like to invite you to read our full report, which will be available soon at the SDPI website. It discusses most of what I talked about today, but in a lot more detail. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Nisma, for the detailed and insightful presentation. It helps us understand how the country platform model can be contextualized for Pakistan, drawing on both stakeholder consultation and global experiences. I would really like, before moving towards a Q&A session, if Ubaid have any comments on, like further comments.
Yes,
With this
thank you
over to
so
you, Ubaid.
much. Thank you so much, Sarah. I think Nisma has pretty much summed up the reports. But yeah, before anything else, if anyone has any questions, feel free to raise your hands, type them in the chat box. In the next few minutes, we'll be able to answer that. Just in the meanwhile, yeah. So I mean, just like Nisma mentioned, you can find a lot more numbers, a lot more details, a lot more subsectoral working within the document that we have developed, and it would be available online by hopefully the 7th of November. We'll be launching it upcoming a flagship sustainable development conference. So yeah, I mean, again, really looking forward. You can find a lot of more insights within the main document as well. And just to kind of, it's one thing that Pakistan is also at COP30 planning to launch its climate prosperity plan, which will also kind of recommend developing a country platform for the country. So yeah, again, CPI and the Climate Vulnerability Forum and V20 finance ministers, they're also going to be doing some of the relevant dialogues recently. So feel free to join them as well. And if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hands and we'll be more than happy to kind of facilitate the discussion. I think one point that I have been seeing coming from Maheen is, I mean, country platforms is more of like a strategic roadmap and a partnership that kind of shows how this coordination can actually work. So, I mean, not something kind of a platform that can kind of provides you a single window facility where you don't have to kind of go. I mean, the internal coordination mechanism within the country would pretty much remain the same. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to mention. But yes, Sarah, this was just one pointer that I wanted to mention. Back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see if anyone has any question. I guess you have already answered and addressed the question that Maheen asked. So yeah, with this, thank you, Ved, and thank you once again to all the speakers, participants, and colleagues for joining us today. On behalf of STPI and NCET again, I truly appreciate your time and engagement in today's important conversation. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you in our future engagements and events. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Bye.